Well, hello there, lovely people. Today we're going to be discussing Lovecraft Country. Lovecraft Country is a dark historical fiction fantasy set in 1954 America. Our main protagonist, 22-year-old Atticus, a Black Korean war vet, returns home to Chicago after receiving a mysterious letter from his missing father. Atticus, his Uncle George, and his childhood friend Letitia take a journey to Ardor, Massachusetts, where we find that Atticus' family heritage is something much bigger than he ever imagined. This story combines the real-life horrors of racism and the magical horrors of malevolent spirits, as well as a Lovecraftian cultish conspiracy. So here's my review. Honestly, I love this book. I love this book with caveats. It definitely had a section or two where, put in context of the larger overall story, I understand why they need to happen, but they lulled. And I almost DNF'd this book. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because it ended on a really good note. It wrapped up the story very neatly. It makes me excited about the show, which in this case I'm going to make a very, very rare statement and say I think that the show will do better than the book.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Not that the book isn't good. It's just that knowing what I know now about how this was a kind of pitch, this read as a collection of really good ideas, but not quite unfinished. And I think that was part of the reason why I had a little bit of that lull, because it's just I understand where this is going. I think the way that it's read, if I saw it kind of interspersed in between where it's we're going back and forth between characters' point of views, then I understand exactly where this was going, and this is going to be great. However, reading that does not translate well in text, and that leads me to believe that this will be an awesome series. And hopefully they change these things, some of the things around to make it a little bit fresh. I already know that at least one thing will be changed. The villain in the movie is going to be gender swapped. So I think because of that, the dynamics will be changed. That's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing that, but hopefully a lot more is changed to kind of keep the story fresh. My favorite thing about adaptations is I don't want something to sell me, not all the time at least. There are some times where I'm a little bit of a stickler. It's the work is perfect, don't change it. But for the most part, I understand that the magic of adaptations is bringing the larger essence of the story, not telling the story word for word. In this particular case, I want the essence of the story. I do not want this to be word for word exactly what is in the book. Knowing that Jordan Peele is going to bring his magic into it, and we're going to get Misha Green's imagery in it, I think we're going to be just fine in that regards. That being said, I liked that the book did a really good job of holding a mirror up to not only Lovecraft's racism, which again this book pays homage to, so of course he has to do that, but also America's racism. I was surprised that Matt Ruff, being a white writer, did a good job of coming up with fully actualized and realized characters. A lot of these characters seemed like they could be people I know. Yeah. And he didn't rely on stereotypes or badly used AAVE. And I kind of have an issue with white writers using AAVE, because generally, unless you're a linguist or you at the very least come from the standpoint of African American vernacular English is its own unique language. It's not quote unquote speaking incorrectly, which a lot of people come from that racist point of view, you might not know that it has a syntax and a proper grammar. And if you already are coming from those false beliefs that it's just speaking wrongly, more than likely you will use it incorrectly. And me, a person that grew up around people speaking AAVE, like, we know that's not, it's incorrect. It takes me out of the story. That being said, reading, from what I've read in a lot of books, even other Black people sometimes don't understand AAVE. So if you're writing Black characters, I would just say it's okay not to use that in your book. In fact, I would prefer it if you do not know how to use it incorrectly. If you don't have somebody that's a sensitivity reader, somebody that understands how the language actually works, just don't use it. And I appreciate that Matt Ruff did not use that. As far as characters I related to, I really liked Hippolyta, who is Atticus' aunt. She was a character that I felt a connection with for the simple fact that she had a dream and she let society kind of talk her out of that dream. And it was very unfortunate, but she's kind of making sure that that doesn't happen to her son. So there is that. And then also the main character, Atticus, who is an avid reader and lover and consumer of sci-fi, speculative fiction, and all of those things, where it's just like reading those books, I didn't always see characters I identified with, but I did find enjoyment in reading those books. Now, of course, I am in a much different age, so we have people like Octavia Butler, N.K. Jemisin. We have a lot more to choose from when it comes to like science fiction, where we can find our representation. But when I was younger, N.K. Jemisin wasn't around yet, and I didn't know much about like Octavia Butler. So seeing myself in fiction was really hard. Luckily, I did have comic books. I was a big X-Men fan, and when I say I had comic books, really, I had Scanlations, UncannyX-Men.net, fan fiction. But same difference, like I was able to exist in those types of media where Atticus didn't, but it was still a type of starvation thing. That was all that I had. So one thing that I have seen other reviewers say, mostly white reviewers, but I can understand other non-Black reviewers kind of having this sentiment. They did say the whole Lovecraftian type theme, that cosmic horror of the unknown, unknowables, or the going mad, those types of themes, they didn't really see that in this book. And I would argue that for me as a Black woman, I think that the existential dread and fear of the beyond, of the unknowable, of things that, you know, we can't quite comprehend, that exist outside of our personhood, could be represented in racism. And I think that, I don't know if that was intentional by Matt Ruff. I'm going to go from the standpoint that it was, because he is an author, and I would like to think that an author that makes a work like this is very intentional about his message. And I would say that, like, he did a really good job for me of representing the horror and insidiousness of racism. I would also say that if you're looking for, quote unquote, the how can racism make someone question their very existence or be mad, or go mad, I would say just look at our current news. For those of you who have played Cards Against Humanity, I'm pretty sure you've heard the story of the Black staff writer Nicolas Carter recently wrote a Medium article about how his experience at Cards Against Humanity actually led him going to a mental hospital. He really kind of just sat back and realized that the Cards Against Humanity creator, Max Temkin, and some of the other people on the writer's board was essentially using him as a token for kind of safely pushing the boundaries of racial things. If you've played Cards Against Humanity, you know the tagline is really just for, I don't know the tagline exactly. I'll probably have it on it in a video, but it's basically like your goal is to be asshole-ish and funny. That being said, some of those things pushed boundaries, and we found that some of the things that could have come out pushed the boundaries even more. Luckily, Nicolas was like, yeah, no, you're not using me as an okay for that. There was a card that should have contained N-word, and Nicolas noticed that like this was getting more and more to the point where it wasn't poking fun at racism, but it was being racist. And the article I would suggest to read, and this will go under what I would call, I don't know, but I would suggest you read How to Know You're Not Insane and How a Cards Against Humanity staff writer was fired. And that will give you more of an example of why I feel that anti-Black racism, this type of racism, is really kind of it explains more of like why I think that this book does its job correctly.
Watch yourself, you can't run, you can't hide. Stay with us, man, you can't run, you can't hide.
So here's the segment I would like to call Bookworm Earworm. Bookworm Earworm is a song or songs that remind me of the motif of the story that we've read. And I think that Zeal and Ardor is a good band to listen to. I did want to pick a specific song, but I will say any song from their last two albums will go well. Maybe Gravedigger's Chant will probably be a top one for me if I had to recommend one song. So Zeal and Ardor is a Swiss-American avant-garde metal band, and it's led by Manuel Gagnon, a Swiss-American musician who previously created a chamber pop project called Birdmask. The band was formed in 2013 and mixes sounds of African-American spirituals and black metal. There's also other intonations of black music mixed in there, but most of it is Negro spirituals. I don't know why Wikipedia said African American spirituals and black metal. So I think that's pretty cool. I will say this music isn't for the faint of heart. If you are an overtly Christian or religious person, I can understand skipping this particular band. He goes in from the premise of what if instead of slaves, I guess, adopting Christianity as was, at the time, they adopted Satanism instead. So if that is a hard nope out for you, maybe don't listen to this band. But if it's not, and you, like me, kind of view art through a lens of, is this good or not, and will it entertain me, then I will say listen to it. It is a really good, it's a really good band, and I think it fits the theme of this book pretty well. Again, I guess if I had to pick one particular song, that would probably be Gravedigger's Chant, but I think all of Stranger Fruit, maybe. This is a hard one, but I really, really love this band. I discovered them probably 2 weeks ago, and yeah, I think it's a good fit for the book. So here are a few notable quotes that I enjoyed from the book. But stories are like people, Atticus. Loving them doesn't make them perfect. You try to cherish their virtues and overlook their flaws. The flaws are still there though. And that is a really good metatextual or reference about Lovecraft himself, and of course about how I feel in general about stories. And then of course the other one. You want me to be your magical Negro? Y'all, this is in reference to something I don't want to spoil, but again, the poignancy of Matt Ruff realizing that this magical Negro is harmful, and then putting it in context of the scene that comes with it's golden. It is hilarious. So yeah, I think you should read the book. By Any Reach Necessary is our idea of media analysis, emphasizing our collective experiences with our steamy takes. The name comes from a quote, like I said, made famous by Malcolm X. And the original quotation is a translation of Frantz Fanon's 1960 address to the Agro-Positive Action Conference. We plan on doing this more. These actually might become their own episodes, but for now, I am using it to refer to some readings that I think will really fully flesh out the setting for you, especially if you aren't Black or you don't understand some of the ways that the book references a lot of those deep structural racist things that have impacted us. So, one of the things that was touched on upon this book is kind of like redlining, and how there was a housing buying struggle. I would suggest reading The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. That book is extremely eye-opening as far as how cities are still segregated today. I will say it is a bit academic, so this is not something, you read and you don't take any types of notes on or whatever. It's kind of in the middle, so it's not too academic where you need a dictionary for every other word, but it can be a little bit of a snoozer. That being said, it's really good information. You find a lot of information about redlining, how the GI Bill skipped over Black folks as far as gaining wealth in this country, all of that stuff. I would also read the Negro Motorist Green Book, or if you don't even want to read the book because it's not an actual book for consumption, it is more kind of a guide to safely travel. I would say just read the Wikipedia article on the Negro Motorist Green Book just to start with. And the reason why is one of the main parts of this book features something called the Safe Negro Travel Guide, which is a fictional counterpart to the Negro Motorist Green Book owned by Atticus' uncle. Basically, there were towns, in some cases there still are towns, that you did not, as a Black person, want to be at there during sundown. And so this book is a book of safe places you can travel, where you can go and find hotels, restaurants, gas stations, those types of things that will serve Black people and serve Black people safely without disappearances. I would also recommend James W. Loewen's Sundown Towns. Now, caveat, this one I actually did not read, but it is referenced in the back of Lovecraft Country, the book. So, and it was interesting that he had these like list of books to read to kind of understand these things. And this was already an idea that I wanted to do for my book review channel. So I feel like he kind of made that easier. And that is actually on my TBR as we speak right now. I would also say, because this poem actually is referenced in the book, you can find it for free on like, Wikisource. H.P. Lovecraft's On the Creation of Niggers. This is the quintessential poem to kind of realize that Lovecraft, yes, was a vehement racist. Not to mention, like I said, if you read some of his stories, I've read at least one or two, and by read I mean listen to the audiobook, because I am a busy person and sometimes I listen to audiobooks. And also having ADHD, sometimes I have to switch things up to make sure that I am still consuming some type of reading. But I've read one of his stories, and it's very othering of anything that's not white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. So there's that. There are also a few references to the Tulsa Race Riots, or the Tulsa Race Massacre as it's now currently corrected to, which I love that we're kind of putting that more into our language. I don't have a specific book in mind for that. There are plenty of books for that. I would just say pick one up. And yeah, so, oh, and I would also, because this one I didn't even know. And I do need to find something to kind of put up there. But there is a Wikipedia article on a, what is called Niggerhead. So Niggerhead, of course, was like for brands and stuff. And we all kind of like knew about that, maybe. Or at least I did. What I didn't know is that it was apparently a good luck thing to rub a quote-unquote nigger's head for good luck. Which, so much cringe. This really comes into play when the son of Hippolyta and George encounters this homeless person who wants to rub his head for good luck. Apparently this person has a gambling problem, and because, you know, in 1954, you know, these microaggressions that we have now, they were actually macroaggressions. This man really wanted to rub his head for good luck. It created a really, and I think this is another thing I really liked about the story. It was really good at making me feel uncomfortable about that. So I don't have a specific book for that. That will probably end up coming later, but I think at this point I really just want to put this video out because I have recorded some variation of this for the past 1 week and a half, and at this point I'm like, okay, I don't have all of the research, but I really want to put this review out, especially before the series comes out. Even though this is still by any means necessary, I would also say check out the Poptimist book review on Lovecraft Country. I think he did a really good job explaining the essence of the story, and I really liked what he had to say. So thank you. You have sat through me reviewing, summarizing, and putting music together with this book. I hope you enjoy it. I cannot wait to see you guys again, and thank you for coming. Bye.